At my husband's corporate gala, my place card read, "Charity Case Accessory." His colleagues, particularly his smirking female boss, erupted in laughter. "Still hanging on to him?" They sneered. As I made my way out, I paused by the CEO and whispered, "If I were you, I'd take a very close look at your stock prices." "And what is it you do, Alexandra?" The venture capitalist inquired at Ethan's company dinner. Before a single word could leave my mouth, Ethan chimed in with a dismissive laugh. "Oh, Alex plays around with some consulting work from home. Nothing too intense, you know. Just something to keep her occupied while I'm busy making the actual business decisions." The sentence detonated in the center of the lavishly decorated dining room. Just 6 months before, my playing around had saved a retirement fund over $15 million by uncovering fraudulent accounting at a major manufacturing firm. The report I authored was referenced in 3 leading financial journals, but in my husband's eyes, I was merely keeping myself occupied. I offered a tight, polite smile to the table of investors and tech executives as something deep inside me fractured. The woman seated next to the venture capitalist, a pharma CEO whose company I had deeply researched, gave me a sympathetic nod, as if she truly understood the burden of managing a wife with a few little hobbies. "How wonderful that you have time for your little projects," she said, her voice dripping with a condescending sweetness that set my teeth on edge. Before we get any further, I want to say thank you for being here and listening to these stories that need to be told. If you agree that a woman's professional expertise should never be belittled or ignored, please think about subscribing. It's completely free and it allows us to connect with more women who deserve to hear they're not alone. Now let's see how this all played out. I desperately wanted to inform her that my little projects had exposed more corporate malfeasance in the last 3 years than her company's entire compliance division. Instead, I just reached for my wine glass, wondering at what point my husband had started to see me as nothing more than an amateur. This transformation didn't happen in an instant. 9 years ago, we had met in our university's campus coffee shop during the final semester. We were 2 broke students, drowning in dreams and soon-to-be-due student loan payments. I was cramming for my corporate finance final when Ethan's incessant pen tapping at the adjacent table became too much to bear. "You do realize the rhythm you're tapping is the drum solo from that terrible pop song, right?" I whispered, leaning over during a particularly frantic series on his textbook. He looked up, a sheepish grin spreading across his face that made my heart do a little flip. "Sorry, I think better with a soundtrack, even an imaginary one. I'm Ethan." "Alex, and I think better in total silence. So it seems we might have an issue." "Or a perfect team," he shot back, sliding his chair a little closer. "You can manage the focused quiet, and I'll supply the creative chaos." That one conversation stretched on until the coffee shop closed. We found out we were both subsisting entirely on instant ramen. Both had ambitions of launching our own companies, and both saw mediocrity as the ultimate form of failure. Ethan's dream was to change how businesses utilize technology, whereas I was captivated by the narratives hidden within corporate financial reports. "Let's make a pact," I said that night as we strolled across the quiet campus. "No matter what happens after we graduate, we support each other's ambitions 100%. No rivalry, no envy, just a genuine partnership." "Business partners for life," he agreed, shaking my hand with a playful formality. We honored that pact religiously in those early years after graduation. When Ethan landed his first interview at a small tech startup, we celebrated with $3 Prosecco and stayed up all night rehearsing answers to every conceivable question. I helped him research the company's entire tech stack and market position until he could speak about their business model more fluently than some of their own employees. "You're going to completely overhaul their strategy," I told him as he adjusted his tie in the mirror of our tiny bathroom. "They'd be fools not to hire you. And when you sign your first big consulting client," he promised, "we're upgrading to Prosecco that doesn't have a screw cap." My consulting business began on our kitchen table since renting an office was out of the question financially. I specialized in equity analysis for smaller investors, helping them spot the red flags that bigger firms often missed or intentionally overlooked. The work was painstaking, demanding countless hours poring over SEC filings, cross-referencing executive bonuses with company performance, and building financial models that could forecast disaster before it made headlines. Ethan never once complained about our apartment being buried under stacks of paper or the constant drone of my printer running late into the night. He'd bring me coffee at midnight, peering over my shoulder at spreadsheets filled with numbers that were meaningless to him. "Catch any corporate crooks today?" he would ask, rubbing my shoulders as I highlighted a pattern of suspicious transactions. "Actually, I think I have," I said one evening, feeling a surge of success. This biotech firm has been shuffling its R&D costs between different subsidiaries to inflate their quarterly earnings. Their investors have no idea how much money they're really burning through on failed drug trials. That sounds like fraud. Not technically illegal, but profoundly misleading. When the full story comes out, a lot of people are going to lose a lot of money. My report on that company ended up saving my clients more than $4 million when the stock cratered 6 months later. Financial reporters quoted my analysis, and suddenly my phone was ringing off the hook with investors eager to hire the consultant who saw the iceberg when everyone else was screaming to buy more tickets for the Titanic. In those days, Ethan was genuinely thrilled by my success. At social gatherings, he'd introduce me as the woman who dismantles corrupt corporations from our kitchen table. And his pride was completely sincere. We were both creating something important, both contributing equally to the future we were building together. His own career was also on a steep, upward trajectory. He started as a junior analyst, then moved into product management, securing roles with more responsibility and impressive salary bumps. I watched him gain confidence in boardrooms and learn to navigate the political minefields that would eventually get him noticed by Omnicore Solutions. "I got the executive strategy director job," he announced one evening, practically vibrating with excitement. "It's a massive leap, but they were looking for someone with my specific background in cross-platform integration." "That's incredible. When do you start?" 3 weeks. There's just one catch. We have to move to Austin. I know that means you'll have to completely rebuild your client list, but this kind of opportunity could change everything for us." I didn't even pause to consider it. Of course we're moving. This is exactly what we've been working for. Relocating meant giving up my hard-won client relationships, but my faith in our partnership was absolute. I referred my clients to competitors, broke my office lease, and spent weeks researching the Austin investment scene to find new opportunities. The financial hit was significant, but watching Ethan thrive in his new role felt like a worthwhile investment. What I never could have anticipated was how his professional ascent would slowly poison the very foundation of our partnership. The man who once sought my opinion on every major decision started making choices on his own. He would come home talking about strategic initiatives and corporate restructurings. But when I offered a perspective based on my own financial expertise, he'd just smile politely and change the subject. "The complexities are just different at this level," became his go-to line whenever I questioned a business strategy that seemed financially reckless from an investment perspective. "It's not really comparable to your boutique consulting." The shift became much more pronounced when Victoria Vance became his direct supervisor around our 5th anniversary. Suddenly, every conversation was peppered with references to Victoria's innovative methods, her vast industry network, her visionary take on corporate strategy. "She's an absolute genius," Ethan would say, describing some presentation she had given. "She sees problems from angles that completely reshape the solution." I tried to be supportive, even suggesting we invite her over for dinner. "She sounds like an amazing mentor. I'd love to meet her." He dismissed the idea quickly. "She's always in high-level executive meetings, industry conferences, strategic planning sessions. She probably wouldn't have time for a social thing." Despite my never meeting her, Victoria's influence on our marriage grew exponentially. Ethan began to completely disregard my professional expertise, framing my work as niche compared to his comprehensive corporate duties. The consultant who had saved investors millions was now suddenly too narrowly focused to grasp real business strategy. The final test of our partnership came when Ethan was offered a major promotion that involved extensive international travel. The opportunity was life-changing, putting him in charge of Omnicore's global expansion with a compensation package that was more than our combined previous incomes. "This is it," he said, showing me the offer letter. "This is the moment we've been working toward our entire marriage." "What about my consulting practice? I've finally rebuilt my client base here." "You could scale it back for a bit, just until I'm established in the new role. Then we'll have the financial security for you to be as selective as you want with projects." That evening at the dinner party, as I listened to my husband reduce my career to playing around while strangers gave me pitying looks, I finally saw what our partnership had become. The venture capitalist was already turning his focus to someone more important, dismissing me just as effectively as Ethan had. I excused myself to the restroom and stared at my reflection, remembering the fierce, ambitious woman who once saved retirement funds from corporate predators. She was still in there, buried under layers of compromise and diminished expectations. As I walked back to that dinner table, I made a choice that would change everything. I was done making myself smaller to make Ethan feel big. The foundation we had built was crumbling, but I still had the skills to build something entirely new for myself. The chance to rebuild came sooner than I thought. 3 days after that mortifying dinner party, Ethan came bursting through the front door with an energy I hadn't seen in months. "Victoria wants to meet you," he announced, loosening his tie with one hand while scrolling through his phone with the other. "There's a company holiday party next Friday, and she specifically asked if you'd be there." My coffee mug froze halfway to my lips. After months of hearing about Victoria Vance's brilliance and leadership, she suddenly wanted to meet the wife who just played around with consulting. She asked about me. "She said it was about time she met the woman behind the man," Ethan said with a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes, a flicker of nervousness underneath. "Victoria believes in getting to know the families of her team members. She thinks it fosters a better workplace dynamic." The party was at the Meridian Hotel, and I spent an absurd amount of time picking out an outfit. I finally chose a navy dress that felt both professional and approachable, along with a pair of pearl earrings Ethan had given me for an anniversary. Looking in the mirror, I saw a woman who was ready to make a strong impression on her husband's powerful boss. Victoria saw us the second we walked into the grand ballroom. She moved across the room with a practiced grace, as if she owned the place, which, given her title, she practically did. She was tall, with sharp features, and wore a perfectly tailored black suit that likely cost more than my monthly consulting revenue. Her handshake was firm, her smile was radiant, and her eyes scanned and calculated every detail of my appearance in the 3 seconds it took her to greet me. "Alexandra," at last, "Ethan talks about you all the time," she said, her voice just loud enough for the nearby colleagues to overhear. "You must be so incredibly proud of how he's excelling here. We absolutely adore him." "Thank you. He loves his work here." "And you work from home, isn't that right? How quaint. It must be so nice to have that kind of flexibility with your schedule." The word quaint landed with surgical accuracy, managing to belittle my entire career in a single syllable. "I run a financial consulting practice that specializes in equity analysis," I said, my tone remaining pleasant. "How interesting. Ethan mentioned you help small investors with their little portfolios. That's just so sweet." Victoria's smile never faltered, but I saw something predatory flicker behind her eyes. Ethan is so fortunate to have someone who can be so adaptable with her career. Not every woman is capable of being so flexible. The conversation lasted no more than 5 minutes, but I walked away feeling like I'd been professionally dissected. Victoria had successfully reduced my business to a hobby, my expertise to acute pastime, and my professional identity to a matter of convenience for Ethan's career, and she'd done it all while appearing utterly supportive and charming. "She's impressive," I said to Ethan on the drive home, testing his reaction. "Isn't she?" Victoria has this ability to see right to the core of any issue. She's been a game changer for my career development. 2 weeks later, the first text message arrived. "Happy holidays, Alexandra. Hope you're staying busy with your projects while Ethan is handling all the exciting developments here at Omnicore. So grateful to have such a dedicated team member. Victoria." I stared at the message. On the surface, it was perfectly nice, but underneath it clearly positioned my work as mere projects, while highlighting Ethan's importance to her exciting developments. When I showed it to Ethan, he barely looked up. "That's nice of her." Victoria is very thoughtful about keeping in touch with the families. The messages kept coming with unnerving regularity. "Valentine's Day. Hope you and Ethan have a wonderful celebration. He's been working so hard on our new initiatives. You're so understanding about his commitment to excellence." Easter. Thinking of you both during this special time. Ethan mentioned how supportive you are of his career growth. It's so great that he has someone to keep him grounded. You're just so practical. Each message felt like a paper cut. Small, precise, and designed to sting just enough to be noticed, but not enough to seem malicious. Victoria had mastered the art of the backhanded compliment, wrapping insults in a blanket of concern and diminishment in a cloak of praise. "Am I overreacting?" I asked Ethan after the Easter message left me feeling particularly small. "You're reading way too much into it." Victoria is just being friendly. She includes all the spouses in her communications. But I wasn't reading too much into it. My years of analyzing corporate behavior had trained me to see patterns, and Victoria's pattern was becoming undeniable. She was systematically repositioning me in Ethan's mind from an equal partner to a dependent appendage. The change in Ethan's behavior was impossible to miss. He started coming home armed with Victoria's opinions on everything from market trends to home decor. When we talked about renovating our kitchen, he'd say, "Victoria thinks granite countertops are passé. She prefers quartz." When I suggested a vacation to Italy, he'd counter with, "Victoria says European travel is overrated right now compared to exploring domestic markets." The most infuriating part was how he presented her advice as gospel. "Victoria's insights into work-life balance are truly revolutionary," he'd say, completely oblivious to the irony that her advice was pulling him further and further away from our actual life together. One evening, I tried to discuss a worrying trend I'd seen in the tech sector's quarterly reports. "The debt-to-equity ratios across the industry are starting to look concerning," I said over dinner. "I'm seeing signs of over-leveraging that remind me of the patterns right before the last market correction." Ethan barely glanced up from his phone. "Victoria thinks the current market fundamentals are much stronger than they appear. She says people who get too hung up on traditional metrics miss the bigger picture of innovation." Victoria isn't a financial analyst, Ethan. This is literally my field of expertise. Victoria has an MBA from Wharton and 15 years of corporate strategy experience. She understands market dynamics. The dismissal was absolute. My decade of successful consulting, my track record of protecting investors from fraud, my specialized knowledge, all of it was now irrelevant next to Victoria's general business acumen. Victoria's genius wasn't just limited to influencing Ethan's opinions. She orchestrated my exclusion from his professional life with chilling precision. Company events would be scheduled on dates she knew I had client meetings. She would send out invitations for spouses optional gatherings and then later remark on how disappointed she was that I couldn't attend. "The other executives' wives are so involved in our company culture," she told Ethan during one of their frequent calls, her voice carrying clearly from the kitchen where I was making dinner. "Sarah Chen brings homemade cookies to every event, and Michelle Rodriguez organized that wonderful charity drive. It really makes a difference when the families are engaged." The message was clear. I was failing as a corporate wife because I was prioritizing my own career over omnicore functions. Victoria would plan team-building activities that specifically excluded spouses, then ensure Ethan came home with stories about how much fun everyone had. Victoria organized this incredible escape room challenge for the leadership team. He'd gush. She's so creative about building camaraderie. Meanwhile, when other companies hosted events that included spouses, Victoria would find reasons for Ethan to skip them. Victoria needs me to review the quarterly projections that night, became his default excuse. Slowly, methodically, I was being erased from Ethan's professional world, demoted to the role of the stay-at-home wife who couldn't quite keep up with the ambitious corporate set. My breaking point came during a phone call I accidentally overheard. Ethan was in his home office with the door slightly ajar and Victoria's voice carried through the house. "You have so much potential, Ethan. I see you moving into a senior leadership role within 2 years. But you need to surround yourself with people who understand that level of ambition, people who can match your drive and your vision." "Alex is very supportive of my career," Ethan said, but his voice was weak, lacking conviction. "Of course she is, in her own way." But support and true partnership are two different things. You need someone who elevates your thinking, who challenges your assumptions, who pushes you toward greatness, someone who operates on your level. I stood frozen in the hallway listening as Victoria systematically dismantled my marriage while positioning herself as the solution to all of Ethan's needs, both professional and personal. That night, I started taking detailed notes of every interaction, every comment, every subtle manipulation. As someone trained in pattern recognition, I finally understood exactly what Victoria was doing. She wasn't just undermining my relationship with Ethan, she was executing a hostile takeover of my marriage, using the same strategic mindset she'd apply to a corporate acquisition. The most painful part was watching Ethan fall for it, hook, line, and sinker, interpreting her calculated moves as mentorship and professional guidance. The man who had once admired my analytical mind couldn't see the most important analysis of all. Victoria Vance was systematically destroying us. The notebook detailing Victoria's manipulations was tucked away in my desk drawer when Ethan burst through our front door on a Tuesday evening in March, practically bouncing with an energy I hadn't seen since his college days. "Pack your best dress," he announced, throwing his briefcase onto the sofa with a rare carelessness. "We're going to the Omnicore Apex Gala next Saturday." I glanced up from my laptop where I'd been analyzing quarterly reports for a new client. "We're going?" "The Omnicore Apex Gala. Victoria specifically insisted you come this year. She said it's time you experience the full Omnicore culture." Ethan was glowing as he loosened his tie. "This is huge, Alex. The gala is where they announce major promotions, where the real power networking happens. Victoria wouldn't have insisted you be there unless something big was on the horizon." That single word, insisted, sent a chill down my spine. After months of strategic exclusion, Victoria suddenly wanted me at the company's most prestigious social event. My analytical mind immediately started running through the possibilities, and none of them were good. "She insisted," I repeated, my voice careful. "She pulled me aside after the executive meeting today and said, 'Ethan, it's time Alexandra joined us for the gala. I have a feeling this year will be especially memorable for you both.'" He was already rummaging through our closet, pushing hangers aside with an unusual fervor. "Where's that dark green dress? The one you wore to our anniversary dinner 2 years ago." I was stunned. Ethan hadn't noticed my clothes in months, yet he remembered a specific dress from 2 years prior. "It's in the back, behind my winter coats." "Perfect. You looked amazing in that dress. Victoria mentioned she's looking forward to seeing you in something elegant." The week before the gala was surreal. Ethan was suddenly attentive in a way that felt almost like a performance, as if he were trying to resurrect a version of us that existed long before Victoria's influence had soured everything. He brought me coffee in the mornings without being asked, inquired about my consulting work with what seemed like genuine interest, and even suggested we practice dancing in the living room. "I want everything to be perfect on Saturday night," he said, awkwardly spinning me around our coffee table. "This could be the moment that changes our entire future." Despite every instinct screaming that this was a trap, I let myself feel a sliver of hope. Maybe Victoria had realized that excluding me was counterproductive. Maybe she had decided it was better to accept me than to fight me. Maybe this was her version of an olive branch, a way of admitting that I was a part of Ethan's life, whether she liked it or not. I threw myself into preparing with an enthusiasm I hadn't felt in a long time. The upscale salon downtown gave me a manicure that cost more than my weekly groceries. A professional stylist arranged my hair into an elegant updo that made me feel both sophisticated and powerful. I spent hours researching current tech industry trends, memorizing details about Omnicore's recent acquisitions and strategic partnerships. "Tell me about the blockchain integration project," I practiced to my reflection in the bathroom mirror. I read the preliminary market analysis was quite promising. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I was stepping back into my professional skin. The woman who once commanded respect in boardrooms was still there, just buried under months of being dismissed and diminished. I was ready to show Ethan's colleagues that I was more than just a supportive spouse. I was an intelligent partner with valuable insights and professional credibility. The Grand Excelsior Hotel was every bit as opulent as Ethan had described. Crystal chandeliers, impeccably dressed executives and their partners. Walking through the lobby in my green dress and professionally styled hair, I felt confident, prepared. But the moment we stepped into the main ballroom, the atmosphere changed. Ethan's hand on my back felt more like a stage prop than a supportive gesture, as if he were playing a part rather than escorting his wife. His eyes immediately darted across the room and found Victoria, and I watched his posture shift from relaxed to tense. "There she is," he murmured, and I couldn't tell if it was for my information or his own anticipation. Victoria approached us like a queen holding court, her silver gown catching the light with every calculated step. Her smile was a performance, bright enough to be seen from across the room. "Alexandra, you actually came." The emphasis on "actually" was subtle but sharp, designed to sound both surprised and delighted, while implying my attendance was somehow unexpected. "Thank you for insisting I join you," I replied, keeping my voice level and professional. "Well, Ethan deserves to have his +1 here for such a momentous evening." The phrase +1 was delivered with surgical precision, reducing me from a wife and partner to a mere accessory in front of a room of Ethan's peers. I felt Ethan's hand tighten on my back, but he said nothing to correct her. "Let me show you to your table," Victoria continued, her voice carrying so that everyone nearby could hear. "I made sure you were seated with some lovely people. I'm sure you'll have fascinating things to discuss." She led us through the ballroom like a hostess guiding guests to their assigned spots. Other couples were finding their seats, checking place cards, and settling in for what was clearly a meticulously planned evening of corporate pageantry. "Here we are," Victoria announced, gesturing to a beautifully set round table near the center of the room. "Ethan, you're right here next to me at the head table, of course." My stomach plummeted. "We're not sitting together?" "Oh, didn't Ethan explain? The executives sit at the leadership table. Spouses have their own seating arrangements." Victoria's tone was apologetic but firm, as if this were standard protocol and not another strategic maneuver to separate us. I looked at Ethan, expecting him to object or at least look surprised. Instead, he was already moving toward the head table, his attention fully on Victoria as she explained the evening's program. "Your place card should be right around here somewhere," Victoria said, scanning the elegant table settings with a theatrical display of concern. I started checking the small cream-colored cards at each place, reading the names of strangers. Jennifer Walsh, Marketing Coordinator; David Kim, Regional Sales Manager; Sarah Chen, Executive Assistant. And then I found mine. The card was identical to the others, cream cardstock, elegant calligraphy in deep blue ink. But where my name should have been, it read, Charity Case Accessory. The word struck me with the force of a physical impact. I stared at the card, reading it again, certain I must be misreading it. The professional presentation somehow made it crueler. This wasn't a spontaneous insult scribbled in a fit of anger. This was a calculated, pre-planned humiliation, designed and executed with the same attention to detail as the rest of the gala. The laughter began as a low ripple and quickly grew into a wave. The others at the table had seen the card, and their reactions ranged from shocked gasps to poorly hidden smirks. I heard someone whisper, "Oh my God, did you see her place card? Still hanging on to him after all this time?" A woman's voice sneered from behind me, followed by another burst of laughter. The noise swelled as more people noticed the disturbance and came over to see what was causing the stir. Within moments, it felt like half the ballroom was either staring at me or openly laughing at the elegant script that had reduced me to a punchline. I turned to Ethan, expecting anger, outrage, at the very least, a sign that he was as appalled by this cruelty as I was. Instead, he was staring intently at his water glass as if it held the secrets of the cosmos. His face was a carefully blank mask, his shoulders tensed, not with surprise, but with the discomfort of being caught in the middle of something he knew was going to happen. "Ethan," I said quietly, giving him one final opportunity to defend me, to show me that the man I had married was still in there somewhere. He couldn't meet my gaze. His silence stretched across the room, louder and more damning than all the laughter and whispered insults combined. In that single shattering moment, I understood with perfect clarity that this wasn't just Victoria's masterpiece of public destruction. Ethan was a willing participant. His silence wasn't shock, it was complicity. The man I had supported through every career move, the partner I had sacrificed my own ambitions for, the husband I had loved and trusted for 9 years, couldn't summon the courage to defend me against the cruelest public humiliation I had ever endured. I looked around the ballroom at the faces surrounding me, some laughing, some uncomfortable, all witnessing my complete and utter demolition. The weeks of preparation, the sliver of hope I had allowed myself, the confidence I had so carefully rebuilt, all of it turned to dust. But as I stood there holding that vicious little card, something else began to crystallize inside me. The woman they were all laughing at, the charity case accessory, possessed a set of skills they couldn't even begin to imagine. And Victoria Vance had just made the single biggest mistake of her meticulously calculated career. I walked toward the exit, my head held high. As I passed the CEO, who was chuckling at Victoria's brilliant joke, I leaned in close to his ear. "If I were you," I whispered, "I'd take a very close look at your stock prices." The taxi driver kept glancing at me in his rearview mirror during the silent ride home from the Grand Excelsior, likely wondering why a woman in a formal gown was sitting in his back seat with silent tears streaming down her cheeks. I didn't say a word until we reached my driveway, and even then I could only muster a quiet "thank you" as I handed him a wad of cash. Ethan's car wasn't there. He was probably still at the gala, celebrating with Victoria and the colleagues who had found my public shaming so amusing. When I walked through the front door, the house felt different, smaller, like it was a stage set for someone else's life. I spent all of Sunday in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of Saturday night in a torturous loop. The laughter, Ethan's silence, the CEO's smirk when I whispered my threat about the stock price. By Sunday evening, a new resolve had hardened within me. The woman they had humiliated wasn't a charity case or an accessory. She was a weapon, and they had no idea they had just armed her. On Monday morning, I sat in my home office, staring at my laptop as if it were a time machine, capable of taking me back to the person I used to be. The blank screen reflected my tired face, but I could see past it to the woman who had once saved retirement funds from corporate predators. My fingers flew across the keyboard with a muscle memory I hadn't realized I still possessed. Password after password, I accessed the professional databases, the analytical tools, the subscription-only financial journals that I hadn't used with this level of intensity in years. The old feeling came rushing back, a cold, professional hunger, the thrill of the hunt, the deep satisfaction of seeing the patterns that everyone else had missed. "Let's see what you've been hiding, Omnicore," I whispered to the screen. It took less than an hour to find the first irregularity, a series of executive stock option grants that were dated with suspicious proximity to major announcements that would inevitably boost the share price. The timing wasn't technically illegal, but it revealed a clear pattern of executives positioning themselves to profit from inside information before it became public. I pulled up Victoria's employment records through public filings. Her signature was on the documents approving these option grants. She had been at Omnicore for 18 months, and during that time, these questionable practices had escalated dramatically. My coffee went cold as I delved deeper into the company's quarterly earnings reports. Revenue recognition practices that bent accounting standards to their breaking point. Expenses that were mysteriously shifted between reporting periods. RD costs that seemed to vanish and then reappear in different categories without any clear explanation. "Sloppy," I muttered, highlighting another discrepancy. Overconfident and sloppy. By Tuesday afternoon, I had more than enough material for a regulatory complaint, but a complaint would take months to investigate, and I wanted faster, more decisive results. I needed a different strategy. It took me 3 hours to craft the anonymous investor forum post. I chose the username ForensicFox47 and composed an analysis that would be impossible for any serious investor to ignore. The title was Red Flags at Omnicore Solutions, a deep dive into concerning financial patterns. I included charts showing the correlation between executive stock transactions and company announcements, graphs illustrating the unusual timing of revenue recognition, and tables comparing Omnicore's accounting practices to industry standards. Everything was meticulously documented with precise citations to public filings and regulatory guidelines. The post went live at 6 a.m. on Wednesday, timed to catch investors before the market opened. By noon, it had been shared across 3 major investment forums and cited in 2 financial blogs. The first surprise came on Wednesday evening, an email to a secure account I had created for my anonymous posts. "Whoever you are, thank you. I've been suspicious of Omnicore's numbers for months, but lacked the expertise to document it properly. Your analysis is spot on. There's more where that came from if you're interested. A concerned insider." The attached documents made my heart race. Internal emails discussing ways to optimize quarterly reporting, meeting notes about delaying the recognition of certain expenses, and most damning of all, a thread where Victoria explicitly discussed timing announcements to maximize their impact on the stock price right around the vesting of executive options. "We can shift the development costs to next quarter and announce the beta release this Friday," one email read. "That should give the stock a nice bump right before the option grants vest." Victoria's response was even more incriminating. "Perfect. The board won't question the accounting if the results look good." Thursday brought another bombshell. Someone forwarded me a screenshot from Omnicore's internal Slack channel, posted late Saturday night during the gala. Victoria Vance. "Did you all see Alex's face when she found her place card? Priceless." Senior VP, Marketing. "I can't believe you actually did it." Savage. Victoria Vance. "Ethan said she needed to understand her place. Mission accomplished. She won't be bothering us with her professional insights anymore." The screenshot was time-stamped, 11:47 p.m. Saturday, less than 2 hours after I had left the gala in tears. Victoria had been bragging about humiliating me while I was crying in a taxi. I saved the screenshot and added it to my growing file. The pattern was now crystal clear. Victoria wasn't just manipulative in her personal dealings. She was reckless and arrogant in her professional conduct. On Friday morning, I published a follow-up post incorporating the new evidence. This one was titled, culture and conduct, when leadership failure extends beyond the numbers. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Financial journalists started calling Omnicore's corporate communications department. Investment analysts began downgrading their stock recommendations. Regulatory bodies announced preliminary inquiries. I watched it all unfold from my home office, sipping coffee and feeling more alive than I had in years. Every news alert, every point the stock price dropped, every analyst's comment questioning Omnicore's leadership felt like a validation of everything Victoria and Ethan had dismissed about me. By Friday afternoon, Omnicore's stock had plunged by 15%. The company issued a vague statement about addressing recent concerns raised by market analysts and announced a thorough internal review of their accounting practices. I knew that internal review would find exactly what I had already documented. Victoria's fingerprints were all over the questionable decisions, and her hubris had left a paper trail that would be impossible to explain away. The anonymous whistleblower emails were now flooding in. Current employees, former employees, vendors who had seen questionable practices. Everyone wanted to share what they knew with the person who had finally exposed Omnicore's dirty secrets. One message stood out: I'm a junior accountant at Omnicore. Victoria Vance has been pressuring our department to manipulate quarter-end numbers for months. I've been documenting everything because I was terrified of losing my job if I reported it. Your posts gave me the courage to contact the SEC directly. Thank you for giving us a voice. On Saturday evening, exactly 1 week after the gala, I poured myself a glass of wine and reviewed the week's events. Omnicore was under investigation by 3 separate regulatory bodies. Their stock was in a free fall. Victoria's professional reputation was in tatters as journalists dug deeper into the culture of fear she had created. The woman they had called a charity case accessory had just triggered the biggest corporate scandal in the tech industry that year. And I was just getting started. Ethan still hadn't come home. According to his LinkedIn, he was busy managing crisis communications for Omnicore. I wondered if he had any idea that the wife he had so casually dismissed was the anonymous analyst bringing his beloved company to its knees. As I closed my laptop, I felt a sensation I hadn't experienced in years: pure, unadulterated professional satisfaction. The forensic fox was back, and she was hungrier than ever. The truth now had its own momentum, rolling downhill like an avalanche. All I had to do was step back and watch as Victoria Vance's carefully constructed world collapsed under the weight of her own arrogance. Sunday morning brought the call I had been waiting for. My secure line rang at 7:23 a.m., and the voice on the other end belonged to David Chen, a financial journalist from the Wall Street Journal. I'm trying to reach Forensic Fox 47, he said. I know this is unorthodox, but your Omnicore analysis has garnered significant attention. We'd like to expand on your findings for a front-page story. I had been anticipating this moment since the market closed on Friday. What kind of expansion? We've independently verified most of your documentation. Our investigative team has uncovered additional evidence that supports your conclusions about the questionable accounting practices. We want to run a comprehensive expose, but we need to ensure our source material is bulletproof. 20 minutes later, I had anonymously provided David with additional documentation that would make his article irrefutable. The credibility of the Wall Street Journal would amplify my findings beyond anything I could achieve through online forums. Monday's headlines screamed, "Tech Darling, Omnicore under federal investigation for accounting irregularities." The article detailed everything I had uncovered, plus new information their investigative team had gathered. Victoria Vance's name appeared 17 times, each mention more damning than the last. By 10 a.m., Omnicore stock had plummeted another 18%. Trading was halted twice as a flood of sell orders inundated the market. I watched the chaos from my home office, sipping coffee that tasted like victory. The first news alert about Victoria herself arrived at 11:47 a.m. Omnicore executive Victoria Vance placed on administrative leave pending investigation. I screenshotted the notification and saved it to a folder labeled Justice. Ethan's key turned in the front door at 2 p.m., hours earlier than usual. His footsteps on our hardwood floors were heavy, defeated. I heard him drop his briefcase by the entrance, something he never did. Alex. His voice was laced with a vulnerability I hadn't heard in years. In the office, I called back, not looking up from my laptop, where I was tracking Omnicore's continued stock-free fall. He appeared in the doorway, looking as though he'd aged 5 years in as many days. His normally immaculate hair was a mess, his tie was loose, and his expensive suit was wrinkled. "We need to talk," he said, sinking into the chair opposite my desk without being invited. "About what?" "About Victoria. About the investigation. About everything that's happening at work." He rubbed his face with both hands. "I don't know how much you've seen, but it's bad. Really bad." I minimized my browser window and gave him my full attention. "What kind of bad?" "The SEC is launching a formal investigation. The FBI seized documents from Victoria's office this morning. There are rumors of criminal charges." He looked at me with desperate eyes. "I've been working with Victoria for 2 years, Alex. If they find evidence of intentional fraud, anyone associated with her decisions could be implicated." "That sounds serious." "It is serious. My career could be over. Everything we've built could just disappear." He leaned forward, reaching for my hand across the desk. "I need your analytical expertise. You're the smartest person I know when it comes to this stuff. Can you help me figure out what they might be looking for?" The irony was almost suffocating. The man who had dismissed my professional skills for months was now begging for the very expertise he had once called niche and small scale. "Why would you need my help? Doesn't Victoria have it all under control?" Ethan's laugh was bitter and dry. "Victoria is completely falling apart. She's blaming everyone but herself, insisting she was just following industry standards. But some of the documents... Alex, I think she might have been deliberately manipulating the numbers. That would be securities fraud." "I know what it would be." His voice cracked with stress. "I'm scared, Alex. For the first time in my career, I'm genuinely terrified." I studied his face, seeing the raw fear behind his desperation. A small part of me felt a pang of sympathy for the man I had once loved unconditionally, but a much larger part felt a cold, hard satisfaction at watching his world crumble, just as mine had at that gala. "What exactly are you asking me to do?" "Help me distance myself from her decisions. Review the documents I was involved in. Help me understand which ones might look bad to investigators." He paused, swallowing hard. "I know I haven't been the best husband lately. I know I haven't valued your skills the way I should have, but we're a team, right? Partners for life." The words he had spoken 9 years ago in that campus coffee shop felt hollow, tainted by years of dismissal and his ultimate silence during my public humiliation. "When was the last time you considered us partners, Ethan?" He blinked, caught off guard. "What do you mean?" "When was the last time you asked for my opinion on something important? When was the last time you valued my professional expertise? When was the last time you defended me when someone attacked my credibility?" His face went pale as the realization dawned. "Alex, if this is about the gala..." "It's about everything, Ethan." The gala was just the final public confirmation of what we had become. I opened a drawer in my desk and pulled out a manila folder I had been preparing for this exact moment. Inside were copies of apartment listings, consultation agreements with divorce attorneys, and financial statements showing exactly how much my consulting business could generate if I focused on it full-time. "What is this?" he asked, though his voice betrayed that he already knew. "My exit strategy. I've been rebuilding my professional network while you've been watching your precious mentor destroy her own career through sheer arrogance." I handed him the top document, a consulting contract with a hedge fund that was worth more than his annual salary. 3 of my former clients want me on retainer. My reputation for integrity and analytical precision never went away, Ethan. I just buried it to support a husband who stopped seeing my value. His hands trembled as he read the contract. You're leaving me. I'm saving myself. There's a difference. But Victoria's investigation, my career, everything is falling apart. Victoria's investigation exists because someone with my skills decided to take a close look at her work. Her career is ending because she was sloppy and arrogant. Your career is in jeopardy because you chose loyalty to a corrupt mentor over respect for your wife. Ethan stared at me, and I saw the exact moment the gears in his mind started to connect the dots he should have connected years ago. You know something about this investigation, don't you? I closed my laptop and stood up. I know that the truth has a way of coming to the surface when someone with the right expertise decides to start digging. Alex, what did you do? I reminded everyone that the charity case accessory from the Gala actually has a PhD in financial analysis and a decade of experience exposing corporate fraud. I walked into our bedroom and started pulling clothes from my closet. I did what I should have done years ago. I stopped hiding my capabilities to make other people feel comfortable. Ethan followed me, watching as I methodically folded clothes into a suitcase with the same precision I once used to analyze fraudulent financial statements. You can't just leave. We can work through this. Can we? When were you planning to start respecting my career? After Victoria's criminal trial? After your own career recovers from being associated with a fraud? After you finally decided I was worth defending? He sat on the edge of our bed, looking smaller and more defeated than I had ever seen him. I know I messed up. I should have said something at the gala, but Victoria said it was just a joke, that you'd understand the humor. Victoria told you about the place card in advance. It wasn't a question. Ethan's silence was the only confirmation I needed. She showed it to you before the event, didn't she? You knew I was walking into that humiliation, and you did nothing. She said it would be funny. She said we'd all laugh about it later. I stopped packing and looked him directly in the eye. Did you really believe that? Or did you just not care enough to stop it? He couldn't meet my gaze, which was answer enough. I zipped my suitcase shut and headed for the door. On our kitchen counter, I left a note with words I'd been composing for weeks. Ethan, it wasn't the insult that broke us. It was the silence that followed. The woman you dismissed is the same woman who just dismantled your mentor's empire. Maybe next time you'll remember that underestimating people has consequences. Alex. Walking out of that house felt like stepping into the sun after years spent in a shadow. My phone buzzed with another news alert. Former Omnicore executive Victoria Vance under criminal investigation for securities fraud. The forensic fox was wide awake now, and she was just getting started. The apartment I found was everything our house had never been. Bright, clean, and entirely mine. Floor-to-ceiling windows in the living room offered a stunning view of the city's skyline, and the morning sun streamed across hardwood floors that held no memory of arguments or silent, tense dinners. The kitchen was small but efficient, perfect for someone who planned to spend most of her time building a career, not hosting dinner parties for people who didn't respect her. Moving in took a single afternoon. After 9 years of marriage, everything I truly wanted fit into my car in 6 boxes. I hung my diplomas on the wall of my new home office. The PhD in financial analysis, the certified fraud examiner certificate, the industry awards that had recognized my work before I'd buried it to support Ethan's ambitions. "Welcome to your new life, Alex," I said to my reflection in the bathroom mirror that first night. The woman staring back at me already looked different. Her shoulders were straighter, her eyes were clearer, her mouth set in a determined line instead of the apologetic softness I had worn for years. On Tuesday morning, I got the phone call that reshaped everything. Patricia Morrison from Sterling Peak Investments had been trying to reach me for 3 days. "Alexandra, I've been following your work for years, especially your recent analysis of tech sector irregularities," she said, getting straight to the point. "We need someone with your expertise as our new director of research. The compensation package starts at $250,000 plus bonuses tied to fund performance." I nearly dropped my coffee. "You want to hire me full-time?" "We want to build an entire research division around your analytical approach. Your reputation for uncovering problems before they make headlines is exactly what our investors need in this market." 3 weeks later, I walked into Sterling Peak's glass-walled offices, wearing a navy suit that fit perfectly, and a sense of confidence I'd forgotten I possessed. My new business cards read, Alexandra Pierce, Ph.D., Director of Equity Research. Seeing my name in elegant professional lettering felt like reclaiming a part of myself I had lost long ago. My first assignment was to evaluate a biotech company as a potential acquisition target. Within hours of diving into their financial statements, I found patterns that felt eerily familiar. Revenue recognition that seemed designed to impress rather than inform, and research costs that moved between categories without clear justification. "This company is cooking its books," I told Patricia during our afternoon meeting. "Their Phase 2 trial results don't justify their revenue projections, and they're hiding development failures in subsidiary accounting. How certain are you?" "Certain enough to stake my reputation on it." I slid my analysis across her desk. "Give me 1 more week to document everything, and you'll have a report that saves this fund millions." Patricia smiled. "This is exactly why we hired you." Working again in a professional environment where my expertise was not only valued but celebrated felt like breathing pure oxygen after years of suffocation. My colleagues treated me as an equal partner in complex financial decisions. During strategy meetings, people leaned forward when I spoke instead of politely waiting for me to finish. My insights shaped investment decisions worth tens of millions of dollars. "Alex's analysis just saved us from a catastrophic pharmaceutical investment," Patricia announced at our monthly partners meeting. Her due diligence uncovered accounting irregularities that would have cost the fund approximately $40 million. The applause felt genuine, earned, real. For the first time in years, I was being recognized for the work I actually did, not dismissed as someone who played around with numbers. The Google alert about Victoria arrived on a Thursday morning while I was reviewing quarterly reports. Former tech executive Victoria Vance indicted on federal securities fraud charges. The accompanying photograph showed a woman I barely recognized. Gone were the designer suits and the commanding presence that had once intimidated me. Victoria stood outside the federal courthouse in flat shoes and a cheap blazer, her shoulders hunched in defeat. The woman who had built her career on projecting invincibility now just looked small and ordinary. The charges were serious: falsifying investor disclosures, manipulating earnings reports, and conspiracy to commit securities fraud. Each count carried potential prison time and guaranteed professional ruin. I read the article twice, feeling something I hadn't anticipated. It wasn't triumph, but a quiet, clean satisfaction. Justice had been served, not through revenge, but through the simple exposure of truth. Victoria's own arrogance and sloppy practices had created the very evidence that brought her down. I had simply turned on the light. The comment section was brutal but predictable. "Isn't this the executive who humiliated that woman at the company Gala?" one person wrote. "Karma has a funny sense of timing." Another comment made me pause. I worked at Omnicord during the Victoria era. She created a toxic culture where bullying was disguised as high-performance standards. Glad someone finally held her accountable. Victoria had built her entire professional identity on a foundation of manipulation and cruelty. Now that foundation had crumbled completely. The same strategic thinking she'd used to undermine my marriage had made her overconfident in her financial misconduct. 6 months after leaving Ethan, I realized my transformation was complete. The woman once dismissed as a charity case accessory was now leading investment decisions for one of the city's most respected funds. My analysis influenced portfolio strategies worth hundreds of millions. Industry publications quoted my research, and other financial firms tried to recruit me on a monthly basis. But the professional success was only part of the story. For the first time in years, I was making decisions based entirely on my own preferences. My apartment reflected my taste, not a series of compromises. My schedule revolved around work I found challenging, not supporting someone else's ambitions. On Friday evenings, I would sit on my balcony with a glass of wine, watching the city lights twinkle below, and marvel at how quiet life could be without the constant tension of being dismissed. No more analyzing conversations for hidden criticisms. No more worrying if my insights would be valued or brushed aside. No more walking on eggshells around someone else's fragile ego. The divorce papers arrived on a Tuesday, requiring only my signature to make official what had been emotionally over for months. Ethan had included a handwritten note, which I read once before filing it away. "Alex, I know I can never undo the damage I caused. You were always the stronger partner. I just wasn't smart enough to see it until it was too late. I hope you find the respect and recognition you deserve, minus Ethan." The apology felt hollow after years of dismissal, but I appreciated the acknowledgement. Ethan was facing his own set of consequences: unemployment, professional disgrace by association with Victoria, and the loss of a wife whose expertise could have saved his career if he'd only bothered to value it. As I signed the divorce papers, I thought about the couple we had once been, two ambitious students with cheap Prosecco and boundless dreams. That partnership had been real, but it had also been fragile. When success and outside influence tested our foundation, it wasn't strong enough to survive. But from the ashes of that failed marriage, something better had emerged. Not revenge or vindication, but resurrection. The woman Victoria had tried to diminish was now thriving in ways neither she nor Ethan could have ever imagined. The truth had done all the work. I had simply given it a chance to shine. End of story.